Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. You know, one of the things they said about COVID-19 is that either we were going to have a mini baby boom or a mini divorce boom. And so I thought it would be really good to check in with someone that deals with these kinds of situations, at least the second one of these situations. And that is Jennifer Barkin. She's the owner of Family Matters Mediators and Counselors, a Toronto-based practice that helps people and families in all areas of divorce and separation. Jennifer, welcome to my show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Brian?
Excellent. Thank you. So tell me, what is family mediation and why should one come and seek out an accredited family mediator?
Okay, family mediation is under the ADR umbrella. And what ADR stands for is Alternative Dispute Resolution.
Okay.
So if people decide that they're going to separate, they're going to get divorced, you always hear about people going to court. And in court, we always say nobody really wins, right? Because you spend a lot of money, you have a winner, you have, an unhappy party, and it takes a lot of time, and a judge makes the decision for your family.
Right.
Family mediation is different. It's voluntary, and what voluntary means is you can't be forced to go to family mediation. Both parties have to agree to want to try family mediation to resolve their differences and to choose the route that they want to follow for their family and the choices that they want to make for their family.
Right. And how did you get into this line of business?
Pretty long story, actually. My background before, I have a master's in social work.
Okay.
Part of my master's in social work program, I had to do an internship. I chose to do an internship in family mediation out of the Brampton courthouse. So I observed, I learned, I went into the community and taught about family mediation and what it was. I read a lot about family mediation and I became intrigued by it. Years went by and I had a family of my own. And when my kids got a little bit older and I thought, I was really interested in mediation. What do I need to do? So I inquired and found out about the courses that were needed. And part of my program to become an accredited mediator was not just to do the coursework, but to do an internship in family mediation, which required over 100 hours of working under an accredited family mediator, where I was taught to write mediation reports. I observed mediations. I had to do mediations myself. So it was a real hands-on learning experience.
Fantastic. Now tell me, what's the difference between a mediator and a lawyer and a counselor?
Okay. So when you have a family law lawyer, and family law lawyers should be used in certain situations, and even in mediation, I tell my parties, the people coming to see me, to go seek out independent legal advice. The difference when you retain a lawyer is going to fight for you. They are going to do their best to, whether it's defend you or fight for your case, and they're going to take sides. A mediator, on the other hand, is a neutral party. So as a neutral, what that means is I have no vested interest in the outcome. Parties are going to come together. They are going to come to their own decisions for what they want, and I help them to get there.
But a lawyer is probably, before they go to court, trying to work out a settlement, which is sort of like mediation, and you're trying to work out a settlement. How do you think it works out differently with a lawyer trying to do it versus you trying to do it?
Okay. I can't generalize because it's like generalizing with people. People are different. But generally, a lawyer is going to hear their client's side of the story, give them the facts based on the law, how strong their case is, what the weaknesses in their case is, and fight for them for the client's best advantage. The mediator is not a lawyer in some circumstances, like myself. I have a mental health background. But even if the mediator is a lawyer, the mediator is not there to advise the parties of what they should do.
But aren't you trying to find a middle ground, like a settlement?
What we'll do is, as when we mediate, first I'll screen the parties to see that it's a good situation to mediate, that it's a viable option for them. It isn't always. If both parties then want to proceed and go to mediation, I start with a parenting plan, which is basically a roadmap of how these people are going to parent their kids moving forward. So where the kids are going to stay for the holidays, what the residential schedule is going to look like, who's going to have the major decision making on things like health, education, religion. So people will come in, but the idea is to negotiate something that works best for them.
Right.
And we'll sit in mediation sessions, and everybody has their negotiables and their non-negotiables, and we'll try to find some common ground and work towards solutions that work for the family.
Do you ever have a situation where you say, gosh, these people just shouldn't get divorced? They should
One
stay
of the
together?
questions that I always ask at intake, I ask if people have gone to counseling, if there's any chance of a reconciliation. Before the mediation even starts, I have separate intake meetings where I meet with the parties, I screen the parties, but I also learn about them, about their situations, and so on. Sometimes people will go to mediation, and because in mediation, what we come up with is a mediated agreement, but it's not a final court order, or it's not finalized until it's put in this agreement. These agreements are put into a separation agreement and filed with the courts. So they can come to mediation, hammer out an agreement, but until it's filed, it's not a legal and binding document.
Right.
So sometimes people will get back together.
And so, my opening comment was that with COVID-19, we're going to have a lot of babies or divorces.
Yes, we've seen it.
You've seen a lot more people coming to you for your services?
Yes. The reason really is twofold. I'll tell you who I'm seeing. Sometimes before COVID, the relationships were already on the edge and they weren't doing well, and the plan was to separate. And then the courts closed.
Right.
So the courts aren't taking family cases unless these cases are dire emergencies. So if somebody wants to come up with their separation agreement, they can't do it in the courts right now. So the mediators
There's a good way to do it.
are an option.
Right.
To get to agreement. So I've seen people like that. Then I've also seen people that they didn't know that they were going to separate before COVID, but people aren't at work. They may be in the house together all day. This is all new, uncharted territory, and they're not getting along. And I guess the third thing is there are many people who are reassessing their lives in the big picture and looking at big picture and thinking, life can change in an instant.
Is this what I really want?
Is this what I really want?
Well, tonight we're chatting with Jennifer Barkin. She is the owner of Family Matters Mediation and Counselors. We're going to take a quick break and then come back for more with Jennifer. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Jennifer Barkin, who is a family mediator. But I got to tell you, her resume is really quite interesting because in addition to being a family mediator, she is a certified divorce coach and a parenting coordinator and someone that is trained to conduct voice of the child reports. So Jennifer, tell me, what is a divorce coach?
A divorce coach, I like to call a divorce coach a thinking partner for a client. And what that means is if somebody is going through or contemplating a separation, their divorce coach is there to help them in every step of the process. So if your self-esteem is right down here, your divorce coach is going to talk about things with you, like tell me a time when you were successful in whatever sort of situation, and help give you strength, because going through divorce is draining. It's emotionally draining, and people feel broken. So that's one of the roles that a divorce coach will do. A divorce coach may help people get organized. When you have a lawyer, your lawyer is going to ask you okay, we're going to have to file your financials. So I need you to, what are all your utilities and what are your projected expenses for childcare and every sort of financial question under the sun. And people who've never dealt with finances, sometimes in marriage, there's one person took care of all the household expenses and the bills, and the other person has no idea. So a divorce coach will help with things like that. A divorce coach may help you find a lawyer, learn a little bit about the client and what are the particulars of their case, and maybe help them find a lawyer that deals with domestic violence or that is solution focused, whatever may be. So a divorce coach will help you stay on track, will help you from giving up too soon, meaning we call it throwing in the towel, right? Like, I've had enough, I can't handle this anymore, I just give up, and not thinking about what the long-term damage could be to your family, right?
Okay, so what is a parenting coordinator?
Yeah, a parenting coordinator.
Yes.
A parenting coordinator is what part of an ADR process. It's an ADR professional. And the role of the parenting coordinator is to help parties that already have, let's say, a parenting plan, to help them adhere to that parenting plan. So sometimes the parenting plan that they have may be unclear, meaning the father shall pick the children up from the mother's home Sunday afternoon. Well, what does this mean? Right? The father may think that means 5 p.m. The mother may think that means 12 p.m. So with the parenting coordinator, they can help to fix that plan so that it's more easily adhered to. A parenting coordinator can also help people with their communication. So if one party seems bullying or they can't speak to each other and they have to co-parent moving forward. So the parenting coordinator will use some psychoeducation, which is education based on research, maybe some parenting help for the parties. And all of this is done with the goal to keep them out of court.
Okay. What is a voice of the child?
A voice of the child, new report that can be conducted in family law. It's recognized now that children should have a voice or a say in matters that concern them. So what a voice of the child report does is it allows children to give that information to their parents without pulling children into conflict. So the way that that's done is the parents would retain or hire, usually it's a therapist trained to do the voice of the child reports, and the kids have to be on board, and the therapist will interview the children to find out their needs, wants, and wishes for their lives in these new situations. Now, before any of this information is brought back to the parents, the children are asked, you told me yesterday that you wanted to live with dad, for example. Are you still okay that I bring this information back and tell him? Right. And a child may change his or her mind. And in that case, that information is not brought back to the parents. So this report could be very lengthy or it could be very short.
And how does your business spread up between those three different functions? Do you do most of the negotiation in the settlement, or do you do the counseling, or do you do the voice of a parent?
The interesting thing about my work and what I'm trained to do is if I'm doing one role,
you do a lot.
If I'm a mediator, I cannot be the counselor for the same people.
Okay.
I have to refer that out. If I am a parenting coordinator, I cannot be the counselor. I cannot be the former mediator. So I only do what people ask me to do or retain me to do for them.
And which is your favorite?
I love mediation
because in mediation, it's possible to get people to be able to better communicate, which is so important if they're going to be co-parenting, right? Because that can be a long time.
But that sounds, again, that's more like counseling than it is mediation.
Counseling is more reflective. It's allowing people to learn about, what may have gone wrong in the marriage. Mediation, we're looking at moving forward. We're not casting blame. We're not getting people to fix things about themselves. We're getting them to understand, maybe give them a little bit of education. But as a neutral, they're making choices for their families.
Right. Okay.
And it's very rewarding when two people are butting heads that can walk out of a session positively.
If someone comes to you and they're thinking about, they're really not very happy, they're thinking about going into divorce court right away, would you recommend mediation to start with, or if they're so set and they're very antagonistic, no, go to court anyway?
Well, that would fall more into divorce coaching.
Okay.
So I'd listen to their story and talk with them about what they want to see happen, and let them, I ask a lot of questions, because it's not my job to tell people what to do.
Right.
My job is to help people make decisions for themselves. But when you are so hyper-focused and you can't see the big picture, that's my job. So I'll ask a lot of questions. What do you think would happen? Do you think, are you hoping that one day, because you're always a family, if even with divorce, when there's kids involved, what would you want your kids to say in 20 years about about the decisions you made? If you go to court, that's going to be on public record. Your children can Google your names and see everything that was said. Are you okay with that? So there's a lot of questions. If somebody asks me what they should do, I don't tell them what to do.
Right.
I give them information.
Okay, well, that's helpful. I didn't realize everything was on public record if you go to divorce court.
If you're in court.
Well, that's a good reason in today's world to not do so. So, we've got a ton of litigation about divorce. It becomes very litigious, and over 50% of all marriages end up in divorce. Do you think prenups would solve the problem? Should people agree to prenups? If half of them are going to be end up in divorces, why not talk about the arrangements ahead of time?
Good question. Again, it's going to be on people's situations. Sometimes some party could go into the relationship owning more assets. So it might be imbalance, and they may want to protect those assets. For example, if I was engaged to you and I owned a home, the minute we got married, half that home belongs to you.
Really?
Yeah.
No matter, even if I didn't come to the marriage with any assets?
It becomes family property. So sometimes it might be a great idea to have a prenuptial agreement, or.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is that the same in a common law relationship?
No.
So what happens if people come with unequal assets to a common law relationship?
In Ontario, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Marriage treats things very differently.
So
it's quite complex. I could answer more. I don't want to, because I'm not a family law lawyer.
Okay, never mind.
I can speak very generally.
Tell me about one of the most difficult cases that you've had to mediate.
To mediate?
Yes. Or coach, whatever you want. Tell me about a difficult case.
Okay, so I have one right now that we are just in the preliminary stages of doing.
A challenging counseling case. That would be best.
You want a challenging counseling case?
Yes,
okay.
A challenging counseling case.
I had a case where the court was a very messy divorce with allegations of parental alienation. So the children weren't seeing the father. And the judge ordered that the children attend some family counseling to find out what was going on. Why weren't the kids wanting to see dad? Because the relationship with the father had been a good one. And all of a sudden, one day, the kids just refused to see him. And months had gone by, and he hadn't seen his children. And obviously, he missed them, and he really wanted to see his kids. So the judge wanted to know, what's the real story here? What's going on? So he suggested that the children have 6 sessions of counseling with a therapist. So first I met with mom and got information from her perspective of what she thought was going on, so there wouldn't be bias. Then I met with dad to hear his perspective, and then I met with the children. And at the beginning of these sessions, the children were adamant that they did not want to see their father. I cannot ask leading questions. In counseling, you do not ask leading questions, right? You don't say, why aren't you going to your father's? You know, I might ask questions sort of like, when you used to go to dad's, what were your 3 favorite things there? And then I'll make it equal, and I'll say, and what are your favorite things at your mom's? Or your least favorite things, right? So that it's even. And one thing that we know from research is that children who are alienated can speak, I call it parroting, when the age of the child, so if you're listening to them speak, they sound their age. And then when it comes to questions about the other parent or what's going on, it sounds rehearsed, using adult words, and it's not matching up. So sometimes I'll even say, I'm impressed. That's a big word. Let's play a game. Can we take this word and put it into a sentence? I'm going to put it into 2 sentences, and you have to put it into 2 sentences, and we'll see who wins. We get a prize, a candy. So I can see from doing exercises like that, if it's a parent saying things to a child. So in this case, it came out that after a few sessions, one of the children said to me, I really want to see my daddy, but my mommy will get mad.
Really?
Yeah. And, you know, learned a little bit about that and what was going on. But it was a tough case because the allegations were so awful, heartbreaking. And I can only make a recommendation what I see that's going on, but I really don't know what's going to happen going down the road.
God, that must have been very challenging for you.
It's hard.
We've only got a few minutes left. Tell me, do you have a final message for people that might be listening to us today?
Regarding separation and divorce, if you have children, think of your children, think of their needs. When you're considering what you're going to do with the residential schedule, think of things such as how far you're each going to live from the child's school, how to speak to each other in front of the kids, keep the kids out of the conflict. Because what the research does show is the kids that are not drawn to conflict and not brought into the conflict do every bit as well being kids from divorce as kids that come from intact families.
But if they're brought into the conflict, it's not good.
There's issues down the road quite frequently.
Jennifer, if people want to contact you to get access some of your services, how do they do that?
They can find me on my website. There's a lot of information, and it's www.torontofamilymediation.ca. And they can also call me, 416-832-4650.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. Stay with us. We're going to come back in just a minute.